Well, hello and happy New Year. Angela has the night off tonight, and so I have a guest by the name of Jackie. Jackie, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, John? Happy New
I'm
Year.
Oh, happy New Year. Happy New Year. Yes, I'm doing great. It snowed here in Kansas City, so it's very nice to sit around the fire, look outside, and just I haven't really thought too much about it being a new year or anything, just kind of piddled around the house. So,
Nice,
how about
nice.
you?
Same. Same. Yeah, yeah. I got up and took the dog on a hike. It was a pretty nice morning, and then the rain started here in Maryland and undecorated. And yeah, got my house back in order. It's nice.
Good. So today we're going to talk about, I guess, the year past and the year to come. I just thought we would talk about, what this has been an interesting year for sure, 2020. I mean, this is one of those years where, the entire planet has been impacted, in a very significant way. I don't know of anybody whose life has not been changed as a result of this pandemic, and
Absolutely.
yeah, it's just incredible. And in particular, people in recovery, but not just people in recovery, but since that's who we're talking about today. But what I find interesting is when I'm talking to people in the program, and they're talking about their groups going online, whether they're in OA, AA, NA, whatever. They say, "Boy, this has just been a boon for business. We're doing great. Our group is taking off, and the online meetings really seem to have caught on."
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how we're going to adjust to going back. Some of us, I mean, I know some
Um,
people really, really miss the in person, but there are a handful of us who are really liking the Zoom. So,
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that those meetings definitely are here to stay, and yeah, there's a lot of people do. And besides the groups now, like we've been talking about all year, where geography doesn't matter anymore. Your group, you have people from all over the country. My group has people from all over. I know Angela does the same. Every group now, it just doesn't matter where you're from. So it's like if you can't just shut those meetings down and just move on. So I definitely think that you're going to have these online meetings stick around when we go back to meeting in person. I think that you're going to have both, and maybe even some hybrid meetings for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. And also, I think, what you and I have talked about before is I feel like this is an overgeneralization, but I feel like folks in secular AA are a little less rigid. So we're not
Mhm.
like, oh no, we've got to get back,
Yeah,
we've got to get back in the rooms. I think, I know my home group will definitely have a group conscience and probably wind up staying online, even if we start another meeting, another secular meeting in person.
well, it's interesting. AA is truly is a microcosm of the society at large, because I remember, we have this society, at least here in the United States, where you have some people who say, "Oh, it's a big hoax." I'm going to go out and go to the bar, do whatever I want to do, and then you have the other people say, "Oh, I'm gonna, I'm definitely gonna wear my mask when I go out in the public. I'm gonna stay home and all that kind of stuff." AA was the same way. I remember when this first went down, our group, we stopped meeting pretty much right away in March when the city put in its stay at home order. But other groups continued to meet. And the reason that they gave, and I'll never forget this, and I've heard some people online say the same thing. They said, well, my choice is to die from alcoholism or die from COVID. So I'm going to take my chance and go to these meetings. Did you ever hear anybody talk like that?
No, I did
Yes, I
not.
heard that.
Oh
And
my
it's just, yeah, and
gosh.
it's just like, that's not even that's a crazy choice that you think that you have to make. But people really felt like their in-person meetings were so important to them that they had to risk getting COVID. Now I don't know if that carried on, when we got further into the pandemic, when it was pretty obvious, hopefully to most everybody, that this thing is pretty catchy. you know so
Yes, yes, yes. Well, and then sometimes they didn't have a choice, right? Because the churches were shutting
yeah,
down or wherever people
yeah,
were meeting.
yeah.
But yeah, I had an old timer that I mean, he's still around. He's in traditional AA, and you know how they say meeting makers make it? Well, he always said meeting makers make meetings. That if
Oh,
all you have is going to meetings, it's just not enough. That
yeah.
you need more than just the meetings to stay sober. There has
True.
to be a change.
True.
So
true. And I used to hear people say, and I used to say it myself, that and I've done it myself. You can kind of hide out in AA too,
Absolutely.
not to deal with like just taking risk in life. And there's probably a need for that to a certain extent. I know my first couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years, maybe 5 years, I don't know. I was pretty much in an AA bubble. I didn't really, interact too much with the world outside of AA, but I probably needed that at that time. And then I slowly had to venture out into the outside world. And for me, the big break came, I guess it was when I was like sober for 10 years, I decided to go back to school.
Mm,
And that was a huge deal for me because not only did I learn something and broaden my knowledge of things and just learn to think more critically, that was all good. But I started meeting people from outside of AA for the first time really in my sobriety. Not to say I wasn't meeting people before, but I was meeting a lot more people that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And it was really a good experience for me. And I really felt like my recovery was taking off at that time because I was using everything I learned in AA to get myself through school, to everything that I relied on the program. And even I wasn't going to as many meetings during that time because I had to read and study and so forth, but I felt like I was working the program because I was doing what I needed to do, and I was actually kind of proud of myself at that time for what I was able to
yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Every time I talk to you, John, or listen to you, I always am just amazed how our stories coincide
Oh,
because
really?
every time you say something, I'm like, me too. Well, I think we both got sober around
We
the same
did.
age.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and just like when you're like, oh yeah, my first couple of years in AA, I was in a bubble. Oh, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, me too. I mean, same thing. And the same thing, I went back to
Did
school.
you?
I mean, I had kids, and so
Yeah.
that too, my kids didn't just hang out with AA people. So I met people outside of AA
Yeah.
with the kids. And
Yeah.
but you know what I think happened too? Do you remember when you first stopped going to as many meetings? Like at least for me, I had a bit of a fear, right? Like the fear of
Yeah.
God was
Yeah.
in me. But really it was the fear of I don't know, these people in AA that said if you're going to die
Yes.
um and
Well,
and
uh,
then
yeah.
yeah, and then I didn't, right?
No.
Like I didn't. I stopped going to meetings. I didn't really pray regularly. I started not believing in God, and
Yep.
and here I am, sober and relatively happy.
Well, that was me too. And I think for me, like in the beginning years, I would actually get on my knees and pray. I don't know what I believed or not, but I would do all of that. But somewhere over time, I stopped doing that. And I wouldn't tell anybody in the meetings that I wasn't doing that because at the group I was going to, it was like a huge deal that everybody would say they start their day on their knees, they end their day on their knees, blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't going to raise my hand and say, "Oh, I don't,"
Right,
but
right.
but I wasn't. But during that time when I was going back to school and everything, I completely stopped the praying and everything, and I wasn't going to very many meetings, and it didn't bother me because I felt pretty comfortable. But when I went to a meeting, there was always someone that would nag me about not seeing me,
Right, right.
and it was like I knew I was doing what I needed to do, and I was okay. I was comfortable, and even though I wasn't going to as many meetings as I was still going to meetings, and staying in touch. So I felt like I was okay. But yeah, the guilt trip thing is kind of ridiculous that people will do that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Well, I got away from praying and started meditating. And so that was pretty life changing for me. And that was probably around 10 years sober.
yeah.
Um, so, so yeah, yeah,
So 2020. So
yeah. Great year. Woohoo.
yeah. So this is one of those years where, it's just it's an historic year for sure. I mean, everybody's life was changed. I mean, we started working from home full time in March and I don't think we're ever going to go back, Jackie. I don't think that I'm ever going to go back to working in an office
Mm,
again. I think that, my boss and I were talking the other day and she's on, yeah, just yesterday, I guess. And she said, I can't believe we used to make people come into the office.
wow.
I know. I said, I know. It's really weird how things have changed, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm in a different predicament. I am a mental health therapist, and so I work in an inpatient recovery center that I have continued to go to all during the pandemic, which has been
Mm-hmm.
pretty interesting. But I also have a private practice that I've been
Mm-hmm.
seeing people on the, on Zoom, or
Yeah.
actually it's a medical site, but um, and I
Does
think,
that work okay for you? Seeing
well,
people?
at first I hated it, but people have done incredible work. Um, I think it'll be a hybrid when this is over, I think
Mm-hmm.
some people will want to be seen. I think I would like to see people at least once a month in person, and then maybe three times a month on the video. But there is some, like, I remember once a patient was getting emotional, and she got real close to the camera and said, "Can you see I'm tearing up?"
Ah.
So, which I could,
Yeah.
but it's interesting, right? When you're not like together and the screen could be fuzzy or frozen. So it does lose something in translation, but I'll tell you what, it's really worked. Most therapists I know are completely slammed and full, even
Yeah.
doing teletherapy. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's kind of nice to be able to do that. I mean, I see a psychiatrist and she talks to me for, she's actually a really good doctor. The one I had before her, he would talk to me for like 5 or 10 minutes, give me rewrite my prescription, let me go. This doctor though always talks to me and is interested in my life actually. Anyway, I always enjoy talking with her. But the last time I did speak with her, it was online, and it was just fine. It was almost just like being there with her in person. I didn't really miss anything. I still felt a connection with her, so it worked okay for me. So
good, good.
yeah, yeah. So that's, and then you did mention to me that you go to like is it like a halfway house or a sober house that you work in?
It's an extended care home that,
Mm-hmm.
so basically the facility is a big reputable treatment center here in Maryland. But I work only with the extended care programs. So they're not on the campus. They're in a house. So yeah, luckily I've been pretty siloed, just in this very small population of people that I work in. Yeah. And I do groups with them, and I do all the family work. So I enjoy it, but ooh, it's rough. It's especially with COVID, because they can't go out. We used to take them to a meeting
Mm-hmm.
every night. Well, I didn't. But the program, they went out, and now they can't go. And the one house is guys, young men from 18 to 30. So it's been really, really difficult
So do
with
they
the pandemic.
consider like their entire house like their bubble, their social bubble, that so they can,
Yes.
okay, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then I guess if they ever have someone new that comes in, that person has to kind of take some.
Well, they have to go through the 28-day first. So this is still treatment, right?
Okay,
Like,
okay.
how you go 28-day treatment, then they stay in this house for 2 more months.
Mhm.
Um, and so everybody that goes into the 28-day treatment goes into a stabilization unit first. So they get tested for COVID. They have to stay in this place until their COVID test comes back. So they're all, when by the time they get to our place, they've been uh, 28 days after they've been tested for COVID. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It does. So, what should we talk about now? I want to, oh, you know what I want to talk about actually, Jackie, just a little bit. I want to talk about um I want to talk about what I did with AA Beyond Belief in 2020 and looking forward to
Yeah.
2021. So, like the biggest change I think with this podcast that I've really enjoyed are these live streams. This has just been a whole different experience for me, and it's become like this podcast has become like my home group. It's become, this is like how I stay sober now, I guess. This is my recovery program in a weird way. This is my home group, and I've just been getting so much out of it. But I really enjoy these live streams that Angela and I've been doing because I like to have that instant connection with the people who are listening. It's so much fun to have callers and people commenting in the chat room and just talking to Angela and now you tonight. It's just been, it's just been a, it's just been a, it's been good for me and it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Hmm.
You
Yeah, it's
know?
been great for so many people, John. You guys have done such a great service. I was at the very first one, And
Mm.
it's actually how I got to know Angela. And now we've become really good friends. And I'm here almost every Friday night with a bunch of the folks that are in the chat room right now. I mean, it's been wonderful. And who would have thought we'd still be doing it?
Oh, I know. I know. I swear, when we first started this, I thought this could be like maybe 6 months, maybe 3 months. I didn't know what I had no idea. I don't know if anyone really did. I didn't know. I didn't know what we were in for. I certainly didn't see a year or two. Living in a life like this. But yeah, it just keeps going on and on and on. But that's one of the benefits that came out of COVID. Not the benefits have been for AA in any way, for sure. All these online meetings. There's so many people now finding secular online meetings that weren't finding them before. So that's been a huge benefit. And then for me, the live stream has been a benefit, but also all these other things that are going on, like the Higher Palooza, the online conferences today. And I want to talk about this too. I went to this Tom's, what's it called? Tom's the weather, whatever. I went to this
Yeah,
podcast that
weatherman. Yeah, yeah.
Joe
Now the
C
weather.
was now's the weather, something like that. Anyway, Tom was it? Anyway, so anyway, Joe was on that podcast. I enjoyed that. And then we're going to be doing a speaker meeting next Sunday, but all that kind of stuff, and then the online Excel, all that kind of stuff. That has been fun. I have enjoyed that, and there's been a lot of that. And the history thing I'm thinking about, I've done a lot of those, either by just watching them and enjoying participating, or working behind the scenes helping people out with whatever I was doing. So
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you do a lot. I don't know how you've kept this going and then also keep doing your podcast and interviewing people. And I mean, it seems like a lot. And you have a job, right? And a wife.
I do.
And cats. And
Yeah. Well, I enjoy doing it. One thing that I think I'm gonna do different in 2021 is, and I've already kind of started doing this, I'm shifting the focus of AA Beyond Belief away from the articles and stuff and more towards the podcast. And the reason for that is the articles, the whole reason we started doing the articles was like 5 years ago. Roger was not going to post articles anymore in AA Agnostica. So we set up this site, AA Beyond Belief, to kind of carry on the work from AA Agnostica. Well, it turns out that he never really did retire. He's still posting articles. So there's really no need for AA Beyond Belief to be posting articles. Secondly, It's a huge amount of work to, first of all, go out and ask people to write an article for you and submit it. And then to work with people, because I have there are people that would help me with the editing and so forth, but just to coordinate the effort to edit the articles and get them ready for posting, to post them, all this kind of stuff. It's a lot of work to do that on top of the podcast. So I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna make this a podcast more than anything else, and not worry so much about posting the articles. And I don't know how people are going to take that, but if somebody submits an article, I guess we can still post it. What I've done now is I've moved the podcast off the main site. So like for you listening, if you want to check it out, it's podcast.aabeyondbelief.org. So now the podcast, it can be independent of all the articles and everything else that goes on the other site. So I'm just kind of making that separation now. And I think that's going to actually help me quite a bit, because it was too much to do the two things. So,
yeah.
Oh
It
yeah,
seemed
there
like a
it
lot.
is. It's Here's Tom with the Weather. Here's Tom with the Weather. I like that. I like the name of that podcast. It's kind of a fun name. I would like to know how they came up with it. I should have asked. I was there watching that. You would have enjoyed that one, Jackie, and you should listen to it.
Yeah, I will. I will listen to it. But I can't believe that. Again, I can't believe that they will not just rewrite the big book. I mean,
Oh yeah.
even the Bible has been rewritten. Like every book gets an update,
Well, it was funny. The host actually mentioned that too. He said that he talked about how the Bible had been changed or something at some council or something. He knew his religion pretty well, but what I found, it was kind of frustrating to a certain extent, because I'm just not used to hearing this kind of questioning, where the person who's asking Joe these questions was acting like Joe was like from another planet or something, because he could actually stay sober in AA without having to deal with the big book, without having to deal with God, you know. And the guy was like, how do you make this work? You know, not, you know, and he was also Joe, but Joe did a really good job by letting
I
him
bet.
know. He said, listen, I'm just me. I can't speak for all non-believers, you know, but that's just how I deal with it, you know. But yeah, it was kind of funny to hear that line of questioning that, you know, like he thought that it would be really, really bad if the guy who was hosting the podcast, he thought it would be kind of dangerous if we started messing with the big book,
Oh boy.
the language and stuff like that. And Joe was really diplomatic, and he said, "Well, it works great for me and you because they're two middle-aged white guys, right? You know, works great for
Right.
us, but you know, if you're a woman or if you're African American or whatever, you know, it might not work so well." So
Absolutely. I'm telling you, I know so many women who just couldn't. It's just horrible. And I came in 1989, and I feel like it's even worse now.
yeah,
Because the world has changed a lot,
oh
even since
yeah.
1989.
It
So
has. It has. I think about that too because you know I also came in like that at that time. So at that time, so the big book was like 50 years old, okay, which was pretty damn old. And I remember at the time
hmm
when I saw the book when it was 50 years old, I was a bit disappointed because it was so old, and I was kind of you know kind of hoping that there would be something a little bit more current, but there wasn't. You know that's what we had. So but it was still like so when I learned to read, I was reading things that were written in the 1950s, I guess, the 50s and the 60s, or
right,
is the material that I use like see Dick run, see Spot,
right.
whatever, you know.
Same.
So it
We're
was
the
like
same age. We're the same age.
so it was like you know that language of the 1930s wasn't that too far distant, you know what I'm saying.
Right,
It was
right.
like my grandparents language or whatever. It was still something that I could, you know, it was a little bit different and weird and uncomfortable, but it wasn't like reading something that was written in the Civil War or the Revolutionary War or something like that. Now the damn thing is almost 100 years old, okay.
Right.
So if you read it now and you're like the age that we were when we started, okay, and you're reading the thing now and it's like 100 years old. Imagine yourself back in 1988, 1989. They give you a book that was written in 1888.
Right, right, right.
You know, are you
Yeah,
kidding me? And you know how different the language was in 1888.
right,
It was a
right.
lot it was even more different then than it was in 1939.
Oh, that's a great point, John. Yeah, I can't. I laugh at it a lot now. I just do. I mean, I can still get it. I understand there's some passages that I still pull out when I'm working,
Yeah.
with in a group or something. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the
Yeah.
bathwater, but it's also why I love Dale Kay's book. Have you read that, The
Yeah.
Secular
Yeah.
Sobriety?
Yeah, he did
I
a good
mean,
job with
it's so
that.
good and it's so funny, right? Like I love the part where it says, "Many of us exclaimed, 'What an order!'" And he says, "Well, actually, I've never heard anybody exclaim 'What an order!'" But it's just like
No.
so he puts all this funny stuff in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who exclaims that?
No. Yeah. Yeah. Joe was
um,
mentioning that too. Is talking about like different words. I can't remember what he used as an example, but it's like, I don't talk that way. Who talks that way?
a
And
good old fashioned whoopee party. That's
hmm
in there. That's in
yeah.
the book,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah. It's
You know,
just
it's funny. I was talking, I recorded an interview with Brendan from the UK, and he was talking about the big book. And he said when he was reading it and he read the language, he just figured, well, that must be what Americans talk like.
that's
you know?
great. That is great.
Yeah.
Oh boy,
So
yeah.
anyway, yeah,
Uh,
it was fun to it was I enjoyed doing that, and then after Joe did the interview with the host and the co-host, the audience got to participate and ask questions, and they were all very sympathetic to Joe, and
awesome.
yeah, it went really well. So it was job well done, Joe. Good job out there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm surprised he's not here.
Wombley's
um,
Clapboard Factory, Frank White. Um, I don't
oh,
know,
oh, wow.
Frank. I don't know if you saw that, but I did a I do these. I've been trying to give something to the patrons who support AA Beyond Belief. So I've so I've been reading the traditions, and I was reading that tradition where the reference to Wombley's clapboard factory is mentioned, and I thought to myself, what the heck is that? And so I asked that question on our Facebook group, what Wombley's clapboard factory was, if anyone might know. And I don't know if it is a specific thing other than a clapboard factory. They were common in Vermont at the time that Bill Wilson was growing up, and it they was I guess clapboard is kind of like plywood or like paneling of some sort. And it was a factory that would make this kind of paneling clapboard. And apparently there was something that happened at one of these things that was a complete mess. But I don't know. It's kind of, yeah, these little references like that, though, that just don't make sense. And when you read it for the first time, you don't really think about it. But when you really stop and think about it, it's like, what is this? What is this? Thank you, Frank, for mentioning that.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah, Frank. He
yeah.
said
That's
that
funny.
what was interesting, there were
Um,
true believers in Tom's podcast. Yeah, there were. I think that the host was a true
mm,
believer. Remember, because he said he was surprised that Joe
mhm,
didn't believe in life after death, or he was curious if Joe believed in
mm.
life after death. Joe said something like, "That's a little bit egotistical," or something. I can't remember how he said it, but
Oh, that's
very
great.
funny.
That's
Yeah.
great. Ugh. So, so John, in reflecting on 2020, what do you think? Like, I mean, I know it's hard, at least it's hard for me to talk about some of the kind of cool things that happen, like
Uh,
the fact that I got to know all these secular AA people all over the world, really, not just the country. And um, for me, it's almost like I really needed something to kickstart my recovery. And secular AA has done it for me. It's been
yeah.
so awesome. But I also have a hard time talking about like, oh wow, it's a worldwide pandemic and all kinds of other stuff that we could talk about that happened this year. And yet I can say, well, yeah, my life. I also have some good things that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
it's
Same
tough.
same with me. It was I there's a little bit of I can you call it survivor's guilt or something, but there's a bit of I mean, I know that there's a
Exactly.
lot of suffering going on out there. And I know that. I mean, there are people that are literally hungry, there are people that have lost their jobs, there are people who have lost loved ones, there are people, who are sick in the hospital right now. I haven't been impacted that way. I mean, I certainly have known people who have had it. I don't know anyone who's died from it, but my wife lost her job, but they gave her a nice severance package, and I'm still working from home and am able to isolate and take care of myself and everything. So I've not really been impacted in a really serious way. And and like you, there's been some benefits that have come from it, like working from home for number one. I do like working from home. I like doing the live streams. I like meeting all the different people that you get to meet. And yeah, so I hear you. It's kind of weird to know that we're in this huge um, disaster, really, but
Hmm.
we're doing okay, I
Yeah.
guess.
I
So,
mean, yes, yes, absolutely. My new motto is when people say, "How are you?" I say, "I'm good enough." Like it
yeah,
seems okay to just be good enough. I'm good enough.
yeah.
I don't have COVID. I'm still working. My immediate family safe. I did actually lose a loved one.
Oh,
My
I'm
sister-in-law
sorry.
died in
Oh,
August of COVID, and it was awful.
oh God.
It, it was really to think. You know how you used to hear people say, I don't think you're hearing it much anymore, but where they say, well, I'm 85, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. But you do not want to die of COVID
No,
alone in a hospital. Basically,
no.
you suffocate to death.
Oh,
So I did lose a loved one,
oh,
and
I'm
I certainly
sorry.
know other people who've been quite sick. Thank you. But I also, yeah, and I've definitely had some lots of stress. Again, being a therapist when all this is happening, having both personal relationships and professional, where people are having to school their children and work and all kinds of like chaos, and then the unknown. What I found is people who have survived trauma, that when this started happening, it seemed like it was turned up a little more for them
Mm,
because the nature of trauma is uncertainty and not knowing,
yeah.
and so when COVID came and nobody
Mm,
knew, nobody's been through this before, people, those folks got really turned up. So
yeah.
um, yeah,
Well, I've never heard that definition, but that
yeah.
makes
So
sense. Is the not knowing and the instability being trauma? Yeah.
mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
that totally makes
I
sense.
mean, it
Not
can
knowing
come
what
in
to
a lot of
expect.
different ways, but
Yeah. Because it's stressful
yeah,
to
if
not
you think,
know.
I don't know if anybody's grown up in an alcoholic home, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just to think of growing up in a home where someone is severely depressed or
Right.
alcoholic, or and you get home from school and you don't know what's going to happen,
Exactly. That was my
right?
life
And
growing
and
up for
so
sure. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
you generalize that anxiety,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when you get into circumstances where you don't feel like you're in control and you don't know where the finish line is or even the starting line, it can really, where I might only go up to a 5, you might go up to an 8 or a 9, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
untreated, if it's untreated, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It,
yeah, I like that. Kind of like a football knee being susceptible to re-injury. That's really perfect.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Some good comments out there, Frank.
Yeah. So I've certainly, yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what I was saying. It's not like it's been all unicorns and cupcakes for me. That's for sure.
Right.
But I have, and I wonder if that a little bit isn't being in recovery and being a practitioner of mindfulness and meditation, where it's just like I do know how to right size things. I don't have to let, if I'm looking at my life like slices of a pie,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, COVID is a pretty big slice of that pie, but there are other slices, and I don't want to lose sight of any of that.
I'm putting the phone number up there for people. No, I hear you. There you go. So
Oh,
please
good.
call in if you would like to. Oh, there we go. Call in if you'd like to.
Wait, call
844.
in with your Christmas memories?
Oh no! Oh, shoot, I forgot to change that one. Call in if you'd like to talk about, share with us about what 2020 was like for you, what you're hoping for 2021. We'd love to hear from you. One thing I am kind of looking forward
Or
to.
call in with your Christmas memories.
Yeah, call it your Christmas memory. One thing I'm kind of looking forward to, I guess, is the the conference in Bethesda if it happens. I think there's a good chance of it actually happening. Because
Awesome.
it's scheduled for October. And if they get enough people vaccinated, maybe it would be a good time, I don't know. But I'm kind of looking forward to being able
Hmm.
to I'm looking forward to being in a gathering with actual, with people actually present. I'm looking forward to that, to be honest with you, to have that
Me
experience
too.
again.
Me
Yeah.
too.
And
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to, I would meet you there. We would
yeah,
actually get to meet face to face,
yeah,
and so many other people I've never met in person, and it would be my first secular conference. So
yeah.
that'd be really exciting.
Yeah, I've enjoyed everyone I've been to, and I was looking forward to it and last time, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to it now. And it's funny too. I enjoyed the one that we did online, and I was dreading it right up to the moment that we started doing it. But when we finished doing it, I was like so energized, and I was like, okay, let's do another one. You know, so
Nice.
yeah, it
Nice.
was kind of fun, I have to say. You really do. Although it's nice being around with everybody in person, you really do. Working with people online to pull something off like that. It's kind of rewarding and fun, and you do get to meet people. Like I met a lot of new people just from that experience of putting on that conference. But the in-person conference, the same way. You just meet all kinds of new people that you wouldn't have met otherwise, and stay in touch with them. The first conference I went to in 2014, that's exactly what happened. All these people that I'm talking to now, I met for the first time back in 2014.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I can't wait to be in with the cool kids. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I can't believe when me and a few of my friends stumbled upon your podcast, and then I found, secular AA and realized you guys have been doing this for a long time. Yeah, I don't know. I think they blocked all the signals here in our part of the world.
I
It is
know.
weird though that there were no secular meetings. There's one secular meeting in Baltimore, Maryland,
Yeah.
and there are hundreds of meetings every day in Baltimore. One
Yeah.
secular in a week. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is amazing that really since 1975 they've been having these meetings, and you know, and I guess that more of these were coming up like in the 1980s, but none of these groups knew about each other, so they weren't. There was no synergy, I guess, to grow more and more of them, and then that changed in 2014 for sure in Santa Monica, and when everybody realized, oh wow, our group isn't alone. There's a lot of others out there. And then we did get that synergy and we kind of worked together to get the word out. And now COVID has just amplified that, I think. This is kind of like this COVID thing has been like it's kind of like Santa Monica. Santa Monica was our first international conference that from that, a lot of new meetings started. And
Hmm.
COVID is that for the online meetings. A lot of online meetings have
Absolutely.
started because of COVID, and so been a game changer for sure. Bree
Yeah, absolutely.
says one of the results of COVID will be more face-to-face secular meetings. Yes, I think you're right,
Hmm.
Bree. There will be more secular meetings. Bree, there was a woman in the Tom's meeting today who was from Kansas City, and I wish I could have chatted to her, but they had the chat feature turned off for participants for security reasons, I guess, because I don't know if she's ever heard of our meeting or not. But it just occurred to me that, wow, she now knows about secular AA meetings and never, I don't think she ever would have known otherwise if it wasn't for this
Hmm.
COVID thing. I just don't think she would have known. And she mentioned when she was asking Joe questions, she liked that. She said that Joe gave her new language to use. And she didn't go into detail, but she said that she was mistreated at her home group, probably because of her belief system. But she didn't really go into any detail, and you could just see how relieved she was. Now, of course, we've had a meeting in Kansas City, a secular meeting since 2014, but she wouldn't know about it because it's not even in her mind to think that such a thing would
Right.
exist. You
Right.
know, so
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think people know either, like that secular meetings aren't some sort of, we're not all like naked dancing around a
mm-mm.
fire. Like we're just normal people in recovery who
Yep.
are just talking about, how to deal with stress in recovery or how to, whatever, like sponsorship or,
And the more mature the
you know,
group gets, the less you would even know anything other than, oh, this group doesn't pray, this group doesn't, otherwise it's
yes.
just a perfectly normal AA meeting, people supporting one another, just without all the praying, and you won't hear a lot of quoting from the big book probably,
No.
but other than that, yeah. Yeah, I think that most groups will go through. I don't know if this happens online, probably does, but some groups will go through a period of time when they're initially growing, where they're going to have newcomers who are very experienced in AA, but have had a bad experience, because they're atheists and their groups have not been treating them very well, or they felt like they had to hide their true belief
Right.
system and so forth, and so they come to a secular meeting for the first time, and we call it I've heard it called God detox. So they have to kind of get it out of their system. And I know that our group went through that for a while and went through phases of it where you would hear a lot of talk that would seem it was kind of like anti AA or anti God or whatever, but it was just really people that were needing to get that out of their system. But once a
Hmm.
group kind of goes through that process and they get all of that out of their system, then the group has kind of matured to where it's just really about moving forward with recovery.
Yeah, that's great. I actually think that's happened to our group. We started online because we were going to start in person, but then the pandemic hit. And I think the first couple of meetings were people talking about, oh, this is so great, and there's no dogma. And now you don't. Nobody talks about that.
No,
You know, they talk.
no.
They bring a topic, and yeah. So it's happened actually just since March for us. So it's been pretty cool. Now we have had the benefit of having people well versed in secular AA come from other
Yeah.
states. You know, so that's been good. But I just heard the other day, somebody was very new in recovery, very new, maybe 3 months, and they were having cravings. And a very well-meaning person said to them, "Well, when I was getting sober, they told me to pray for relief of the cravings."
Mm,
And I'm thinking, if you came to our meeting, our secular meeting, my home group, and you said you were having cravings, you would get solid advice. Like you would get
right.
like, well, are you, what do you do? Are you
Right.
exercising? Are you
r-
calling people? Are
Right.
you, like we wouldn't just say, wait for the miracle to happen, or whatever. I don't know. It's just so much more practical.
Anchor made a comment saying that regular AAs tend to demonize secular meetings, or at least warn newcomers not to go to them. I know that that's true. I have heard of people who I've heard people say that their sponsor told them not to go to one of these secular meetings or something. I mean, there's just a weird sort of a fear, I guess, that it's something different, and they just don't feel that it's something good. Anyway, they're wrong.
Right.
Neil
Right.
says
Right.
the bashing
Right.
and detox has settled way down. He thanks God for that. Bless you, Neil.
Yeah. That's funny. Bless your
Frank's
heart.
something Joe mentioned, atheists and free thinkers doing the eye roll when believers come in. Joe mentioned atheists and free thinkers doing the eye roll when believers come in, which is what they do to us at traditional meetings. Interesting. Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess
Hmm.
it does happen, Frank. I mean, if someone comes in and they're like totally excited about God, yeah, I guess it is kind of like, I think that we're polite and we listen to him, but yeah, our eyes probably do roll because it's like, oh God, I have to listen to this shit.
Hmm.
And I guess that, if I come in like, like on the fire atheist, hey, whatever, and want to, bash the big book or whatever during the meeting, then I guess, people will also, and I've done that too, actually, when we were, when I was going to our area assembly the first year, I was a bit of a rebel, or I thought I had to be a rebel, and I was walking around with a little bit of a chip
Hmm.
on my shoulder, and I got a little bit of pleasure out of shocking people, but I think what do they say in the 12 and 12? I loved it when people called me precocious. I'm like, but anyway, anyway, I was kind of like that, but
That's great.
I kind of grew out of that, and it turns out that nobody really gave too much of a shit about what I thought. It did settle
Right.
down a little
Right.
bit. Let's see.
Well, when I first got sober and I was trying to get right with myself and my past trauma, I used to say, I don't believe in God. And if there is a God, she must be a lesbian or just something, right? Because I was like, it's definitely not a man with a penis. Absolutely not. Could that be God? Like you, I think I just wanted to like, I don't know. I was, yeah, I don't know. I was acting out. I
Yeah,
was in my adolescent phase, I guess. But
yeah.
yeah, it was way too much. And then you're right. Then reading the big book with all that he and now and like, oh, yeah, yeah.
Laughing Dog says with the
Well, you
online
know what
meetings.
though?
Go ahead.
What? No, I mean, just with if people do come to our meeting, our meeting's called BYOB, Bring Your Own Beliefs,
Hmm.
and so people will come sometimes and talk about a higher power, being agnostic,
Hmm.
and sure, if it's too much, we might do an eye roll. But guess what? We're never going to tell them they're going to get drunk because they
Yeah,
believe in God.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas, you know what I mean? Like if I go to a traditional meeting and talk about
Oh
not
yeah,
believing in God, they're going to be like, well, keep coming back. You'll believe someday. Like we don't do
yeah.
all that stuff,
No, no, no. I mean, we've had some. We actually have believers in our home group. When we were meeting in person, there's one person I know for sure, and I think he still goes to our online meetings, and he was a believer, and he was quite happy with our group. And he wasn't talking about God or anything all the time, but he just actually even though he was a religious person, he preferred not to mix that in with his recovery. So that was kind of nice. But yeah, if a believer did come to our meeting, yeah, maybe we might roll our eyes, but we wouldn't tell the person they were on the wrong track or try to change them or anything like that. Whereas I did experience some of that with people. But I was going to say, Laughing Dog says that with the online meetings, his now ex-home group took a sharp turn to dogma. Isn't that interesting? That would be interesting to know more
Hmm.
about why that group decided to do that. I wonder if it was a reaction to some change that they felt was taking place in the greater AA world or something. That's kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Get filled.
Was it, I mean, Laughing Dog, was it a traditional meeting or a secular meeting? I'm curious.
Yeah,
Hmm.
what is it, Laughing Dog? I think he had a traditional meeting, and then
Mm.
Get Video says, grateful as hell that my first home group featured an elderly Finnish gent with over 20 years who used to introduce himself as an alcoholic and
Mm.
atheist. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know
That's
any
awesome.
atheists at
Yeah.
all, except for one guy who was out and open about about being an atheist. He was very nice. He was a good friend of mine, and people used to give him shit in a kind of in a good way, kind of make rib him and everything. But he actually helped me start our group back in 2014. So Anchor
Hmm.
says we have a Back to the 40s meeting here. I find it amazing because the people who attend seem to want to ignore the progress made in addiction since 1940. Back to the 40s. That's pretty good.
Oh boy, that's like, oh, I won't say it. I was going to make a political comment. I'll keep it to
Uh,
myself. Okay.
Bree
Um,
says, yeah, go ahead, Jackie. I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to tell you a funny story about what happened at my home group. I know you don't go to a ton of online meetings, right, John?
Mm-mm, no, I don't.
So have you had any of the Zoom bombers or anything?
I've never experienced that. Mm-mm.
So we've been meeting weekly since March, and we had our first whack job come into our meeting. Might be a great topic for one of your things.
Yeah.
Zoom. You know how many people have had issues with this, but anyway, this guy comes in, and I'm the host, so I'm kind of checking people out and just keeping an eye on things in case something weird happens. And this guy comes in, and he's laying in his bed, and he's got this smirk on his face, and he's got some weird action figure right by his shoulder. So I'm just kind of keeping an eye on him. Like, it just right away, kind of the hair on the back of my neck rose. And so he gets called on just randomly, but it was like 40 minutes into the meeting. And he says, yeah, I can't remember exactly, but very quickly he starts saying that often people pick up another addiction when they quit drinking, and he can't stop jerking off. And
Oh my
and
God.
he must have said jerking off like 5 times. And it was so inappropriate. It was probably only 3 or 4, not even 3 minutes, I'm sure. And I just like kicked him out of the meeting, but who knows where it was going. But
So this kid
yeah, it
video
was a
might have
trip.
been in
And it was,
that meeting. He might have been in that meeting with you. I don't. Do you know Get
yeah,
Fitty?
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what you call name.
Oh,
Yeah, and it was really funny though, because the guy. So I kicked him out. Like, you just like remove somebody, right? And
yeah.
then one of the guys at the meeting, one of the regulars said, "Oh man, that was great. Where'd he go?" And another guy said, "I guess he had to go jerk off." It was really pretty funny. But,
God. Oh my God. Oh boy. There could be some really scary things that happen on Zoom, but at least we're getting good now about
oh yeah, the guy was
identifying and
there.
throwing people
Yeah,
out, right? You never know what they're going to do.
well, and
you
that was
know?
hard for me too, because for a minute I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is he serious? Is he really suffering?" But it was pretty quick. I mean, the guy, who sits through an AA meeting for 40 minutes? Yeah, yeah. But it's so funny that guy was at the meeting, yeah, because he talked right after
Oh,
um,
wow.
about tendonitis.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay. Mr.
Anyway,
Whack-a-mole. Mr. Whack-a-mole
yeah.
Pine Nut says. Yeah, no, I have not experienced any of that. I know that
Uh,
my group did experience it at, I think, the Saturday meeting. They had a Zoom bomber, and I don't know what they were doing, but after that happened, we changed our settings so that you have to go to a waiting room first, and that I think that when you go to the
yeah.
meeting now, I think that you're on mute before. I don't know, there's some precautions there now so that you can prevent that. But I actually got an email from someone. I think it was an email. Yeah, it was an email suggesting that as a topic for a podcast about how to run a Zoom meeting. And I guess
Hmm.
that would be part of it, like how to watch out for the bombers and what kind of safety precautions to take and that kind of thing. It would be a good idea. I know I did a podcast episode with Mikey from Oh My God, and he talked about that, what he does at his group and the different settings that he uses and so forth. But it might be good just to have
Hmm.
like a primer, whatever, that just kind of goes through the whole process of, setting up the meeting, the security settings in a meeting, and all that kind of stuff. But I think most people are beginning to kind of learn
Yeah,
how
and
to
definitely
use
have
it.
people call in with yeah. Well, Angela's a pro, so she can definitely. I mean, she hosts so many meetings. I think so.
Yeah.
And then have people call in with funny stories
Yeah. Yeah.
about the bombers, because I
Yeah.
mean, come on, you got to keep your sense of humor. I mean, we're all alcoholics. What are we going to be shocked by, really?
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Well, it's one nice thing about Zoom is you can just, it's easy to get someone out. If you're in a face to face meeting and someone's doing something like that, it's not so easy to get them out of there. Um,
No, right.
he says AA should be about being open minded and accepting. We had a weird deal at our group, that yeah, here's what happened. We had this guy. He was having a hard time staying sober, and I've known this guy for like ever since I've been in AA, and he's had a really rough time with it. But he was making phone calls and sending messages to someone in the group that were like anti-Semitic and just really kind of off the wall stuff. And so the guy asked me, he asked me what he thought we should do. Anyway, I said, I think it'd be okay to tell that guy not to come to our meeting. That was my thought, was tell him, yeah, I think that's over the line. You can't really be anti-Semitic and threaten people and make other people feel unsafe. So I think it'd be okay to tell that person that maybe he needs to go to some other meetings or something. Or maybe you could even word it in a way that you say, I really hope that you get some help, but in the meantime, why don't you not come to our meeting? So anyway, there were some people who disagreed with that approach because they thought that
Mm.
AA should be accepting and that, we shouldn't tell people that they can't come to a meeting. But I don't know, if you have someone who is like a racist or anti-Semitic and making other people feel uncomfortable, I don't know. I don't know. Don't you think that it's the right, a person would have the right to ask that person not to come to the meeting?
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely. Or at
Yeah.
least, yeah, I mean,
Frank says
I,
call them out publicly at the meeting.
uh,
I don't
I
know.
mean, I think there is a whole, isn't there something in like the general service about safety?
There
Because
is.
there are sometimes predators too, where I think women sometimes feel a little, well, we always feel creeped out, trust me. But,
Yeah.
it is, yeah, it's tough. But I don't think, yeah, I would definitely talk to somebody and say they're making me uncomfortable. Or, I mean, I guess it could be up to me to go to a different meeting too.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Um,
that's not fair though either. So I
right.
don't know. I think it's okay to ask someone if they are making other people feel unsafe. I think that we have a duty to make the group safe
Yeah.
and to let that one
Yeah.
person
I
know that
agree.
their
I agree.
behavior is unacceptable and that it needs to stop. And that they're, maybe you could say that they're welcome back if they don't do that or whatever. But
Yes. That's what I was thinking.
something has to change. And I know that the people are sick. I know the guy is not
Right.
well. That's why he's doing this. But still, there's got to be some line to
Yeah, I
that. But
guess
that,
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I guess that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, what if you talked to them and they stopped? But if I was the victim of that, like if I was a
mm,
Jewish person, I
yeah.
probably still wouldn't come to the
I
meeting. Like
know. Yeah, because the
once,
guy, the damage is done. I mean, he's already.
right.
You don't feel. You're never going to feel safe. It's one of those things where the guy, the best amends he could make is to stay away.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
know,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
if he was able to get sober and change his ways, the best thing he could do is not to. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We had
but
an incident like that at my home group too, where somebody made some racist kind of comments, but
Mm-hmm.
they were a little more, there were some undertones to it, but we all got it. And we were a small, close knit meeting. And there was one black guy at the meeting who was a member of our home group and got offended. And after the meeting, they talked, and the guy said he felt terrible, but the guy who made the comment never came back. And he kind of got mad at all of us. It was really weird. So, yeah.
Bigotry is like addiction. Even if you have tendencies toward it, you don't have to indulge them. Interesting.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting comment. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, those things happen. They happen in real life meetings. They happen in online meetings. So yeah, those are just difficult questions that you have to wrestle with. But yeah, there's been another instance like that too, where I had to ask someone not to, because they were making the group feel unsafe. George
Yeah.
says, it's the moderator's job to make sure the Zoom meetings run smoothly and on topic. Bullying is always off topic, always. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Danielle wrote that she feels like that's a moment when you look for allies.
Hmm.
She's actually a friend of mine who is Jewish, and we often think
Oh,
of, secular people being not liking the Lord's Prayer, but when she got sober, as a Jewish person, she thought it was a really weird thing to do,
yeah, really, totally.
at a meeting that was not supposed to be religious, to say this Christian prayer. So
Yeah.
it's not just secular versus non secular, it's anything but Christian.
Yeah. Yeah. No, actually, I remember a few years ago, a person who was newly sober and was struggling with it, and happened to be Jewish, and went to AA for the first time and was really uncomfortable with that Lord's Prayer, and was happy that, he did have that alternative. But yeah, that just points out the problem with that Lord's Prayer, because it is
Right.
definitely specific to a certain religion. It's not.
Right.
It's just God. It's got to stop. Anyway, that's another
Yeah.
topic, I guess.
Yes. Yes. That will never change. That will let Joe C handle on the weather
Yeah.
podcast,
Yeah.
because he'd be really good at it.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, I am looking forward to this year coming up. The live streams will continue. We're going to keep doing them, and it's been fun. The live streams have helped the podcast grow in a different direction. Thanks to Angela, we've touched on topics that I never would have thought of doing before. Oftentimes, we don't know what we're going to do on this live stream, and I'll shoot an idea by Angela, and she'll say, "Oh no, let's do something. Let's not do that. Let's do this instead." And her idea is always so much better than whatever I was going to deal with. But yeah, so she's really helped bring this thing in a whole new direction. I really appreciate that. And I don't know. So that's going to continue. And like I said, the site itself, the podcast, still doing interviews and so forth. One thing I'm going to be putting out here pretty soon is if somebody is interested in being a guest on the podcast, I'll have a place on the website where they can go to, fill out a form to let me know that they'd like to be on the podcast, and these are the things they'd like to talk
Oh, that's
about.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, because some people, or might be kind of shy and might not be afraid to ask if they could, come on the podcast. But I'd love to talk to as many people and hear their stories. I was arranging all the episodes by category, and by far the most numerous category was personal stories. But
Mm,
every single story is unique. I mean, there's some commonalities that are underneath them, but they're all unique and they're all interesting and they're all compelling. And I love those. So, if you want to just come on this podcast and share your story as a secular person in recovery, and the experiences that you've had, I'd love to talk to you and have you on and to share that story. And those personal stories are helpful to others as well, because when we first started doing this podcast, there weren't a lot of other places out there where you could go and actually hear an atheist share their story of recovery in AA. Honestly, there really wasn't that much. And so when people would hear that for the first time, it was really, it was a really important experience for their recovery, because it let them know that, hey, I'm not alone. this is something that's possible. And, so those personal stories are important. So, yeah, we'll be putting
Mhm.
that out here pretty soon so people can, or if you want to talk about, the group you started or a meeting you started, or if you're an author, a book you wrote, or if you're starting a podcast yourself. That I have a category for recovery podcasters, and I've only done 2 interviews with someone who podcasts themselves, and I want to do more of those. So I'm going to actually reach out to some podcasters and ask them if they would like to come on and talk about their podcast, because I think that would be interesting. There's some other really good secular podcasts. The one that I would recommend is called Away, Away, Away. And she also
Mm.
has, yeah, Steph
Hmm.
Roberts. She also has a YouTube channel, and she's just really, really good. I had her as a guest on our podcast, oh man, a couple of years ago, I guess. And when she was the guest, it kind of inspired her to start her own podcast. And she's like really big on YouTube. She enjoys that, and she does the video thing and everything. I want to have her on again, but that's one I would definitely recommend. She talks about the steps a lot from a secular perspective. I think she's gone through the traditions, and she's just got a really good delivery and a good sense of humor, and just is a lot of fun to listen to. So I would check that out. Steph Roberts, Away, the Away podcast. Oh, before we leave, let me give you make some announcements, I guess. So is it our first? So the Secular AA ICSA organization is going to start hosting a monthly speaker meeting on Zoom, and their first one is going to be this coming Sunday, January the 3rd, and we're going to have a speaker from Eugene, Oregon, and Ireland, Dublin, Ireland. And I'm just kind of going by memory right now, but I think it's like at 3:00 p.m. Eastern time. Let me go ahead and get the link here to put it in the thing for you. That's really the only kind of announcement kind of thing I had. Anything that that's going on, Jackie, that we should announce that people might want to know about?
No, no, I mostly get all of my announcements from your Facebook page.
I
So,
know.
yeah, yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's such a great page, though. Thank you so much. And John, really, thanks for letting me sit in for Angela. I'm sorry that she couldn't be here, but
Oh
this
yeah.
was just such a great way to start my new year, to start my 2021. I couldn't ask for a better evening to
Well, thank you for
hang out
doing
here.
this. It was nice chatting with you. I really enjoyed this conversation. Here's the link to the thing here, to the meeting that's coming up. That Facebook book that Facebook group, that's something else that 2020 brought. Anyway, that group has grown tremendously. I mean, like 1,000 people joined this year or something. It's crazy. Sometimes
Yeah.
the group drives me crazy, but all in all, it's a pretty useful group. I think it's helped people, and it is a good place to get some information. So there you go. I put the link in there. It's going to be Sunday, January the 3rd. It's at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:00 p.m. GMT. And the speaker is going to be Kim B from Eugene, Oregon, and Declan O''M from Dublin, Ireland. And
Nice.
I could be wrong, but I think the format is that the first person will speak for like about 10 or 15 minutes, and kind of, I guess, be like the opening act, and then the other person will fill in the rest of the time. I think that's the way that they're planning on doing it. But this is our first run at it, so we'll see. Yeah, suggested format is 10-minute speaker followed by 30-minute speaker. So there you go. Oh, hey Sam, so nice to see you down there. And Sam, thank you for the Christmas card. I got that in the mail. Thank you so much. And Angela sent me
Right.
cookies.
Hate speech shouldn't be tolerated. Angela sent me cookies too, and I could not believe how good they were. I
They
could
were
not
really
stop
good.
eating them. Oh my,
Did,
we probably shouldn't have said that though. There's lots of people probably didn't get cookies from Angela, and now what are they thinking? Oh my
yeah.
goodness. Or maybe everyone did.
I like the cookies shaped like Idaho. That was pretty clever.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I feel really bad about. I do think hate speech shouldn't be tolerated, and I didn't mean to hem or haw when you were. I was just
Oh
thinking of
no.
the politics of it, and like
Oh, I know.
I was just thinking if I was the one being directed at. It wouldn't matter if the person changed or not. I'd probably still have to
Oh
leave,
yeah.
you know.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's
Yeah, yeah,
done.
but
You've poisoned the
absolutely.
well. I mean, there's nothing you can do at that
Hmm.
point to ever be welcomed again. Once a Nazi, always a
Yeah,
Nazi. Okay.
exactly.
What are you gonna do?
Right, right. It's like toothpaste. Once it comes out of the paste, the tube, you can't get it back in. Once a Nazi, always a Nazi. Oh my God. All right. Well, hey,
Well,
this
that's kind of a weird way
great.
to sign off. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. It's been great. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope that your 2021 goes a lot better than 2020. And I hope that for those of you here in Kansas City, that I get to see you again in person real soon, sometime this year. So that's it. It's another
Happy New
episode.
Year.
Happy New Year, everybody. We'll be back next week. Hopefully, Angela will be back with us. Her doggy wasn't feeling well today, and she had an illness in the family, but I'm sure she'll be back next Friday. Until then, you all take care. Be well. Be talking again real soon.